September 1944, Eastern France. American units had closed in around a German garrison entrenched inside a fortress-like position. Massive stone walls rose from the surrounding ground, reinforced by artillery pieces and machine gun nests that covered every possible approach. Inside those walls were roughly 1,500 German soldiers under command of a major who had openly sworn that he would never surrender to the Americans. General Patton sent an officer forward under a white flag, carrying a straightforward message. Surrender now, avoid pointless bloodshed, and your men will be treated as prisoners of war in accordance with the Geneva Convention. The German major's reply was defiant and theatrical, delivered with absolute certainty. He told a messenger to inform General Patton that if the Americans wanted the fortress, they would have to kill him to take it. The statement was meant to sound heroic and unyielding, the sort of declaration that stiffens spines and intimidates opponents. Patton's answer consisted of just 4 words: "I can arrange that." What followed was not a drawn-out siege or a slow, grinding battle. It was a calculated, methodical destruction that took less than 12 hours and demonstrated that Patton took people very literally when they challenged him. If you want to see what happens when you dare Patton to do exactly what he was already planning to do, hit subscribe right now. The German position was no improvised defensive line. It was a true fortress, one of many built by the French centuries earlier and scattered across the countryside. Thick stone walls, natural defensive advantages provided by high ground, and only a handful of approaches, all covered by overlapping fields of fire, made it formidable. Beneath the surface were underground chambers designed to withstand artillery fire, along with a well that ensured a steady water supply. The major commanding the garrison had approximately 1,500 troops at his disposal. They were a mixed force: worn-down infantry units, several artillery crews, and a small group of officers from various formations that had retreated into the fortress as American forces pushed forward. On paper, it was a strong position. A direct frontal assault would be expensive in lives. A traditional siege might drag on for weeks. The logical option might have been to bypass the fortress, leave behind a screening force, and continue advancing. But this fortress controlled a crucial road junction. As long as it remained in German hands, American supply convoys would be forced onto longer, less efficient routes. It was a bottleneck that couldn't be ignored. Patton's approach was always consistent. He offered surrender first, not primarily out of compassion, though he was not needlessly cruel, but because it was efficient. A surrendered enemy position cost no American lives and consumed no time. A fought-over position cost both. So he issued his ultimatum with standard terms: surrender, be treated properly, go to a prisoner of war camp, and live to see the end of the war. The alternative was a fight that could not be won and would only waste lives on both sides. The German major refused, and his refusal went beyond a simple no. He wrapped it in talk of honor, duty, and his personal oath never to surrender. He made it a direct challenge to Patton himself. If you want this fortress, you'll have to kill me to get it. Many commanders might have seen that as an opening for further negotiation, perhaps offering improved terms or attempting to convince the major that surrender under such circumstances was not dishonorable. Patton did not see it that way. To him, the major had made his wishes clear. He wanted to die defending the fortress. Patton intended to fulfill that wish as efficiently and decisively as possible. When the messenger returned with the major's dramatic response, Patton's staff expected irritation, maybe anger, or even an order to simply bypass the fortress and deal with it later. Instead, Patton was almost disturbingly calm. According to officers who were present, his reaction was brutally practical. "The major says we have to kill him," he said. "Let's not disappoint him." He immediately began issuing orders. Precise, comprehensive instructions designed to accomplish exactly what the German commander had challenged him to do, but in the fastest and most efficient manner possible. First, Patton ordered a complete encirclement, not just roadblocks, but a total seal. No one was getting in or out. If the water supply could be cut, it would be. The fortress might be strong, but the men inside still depended on food, water, and eventually reinforcements, and they would receive none of it. Second, he ordered every heavy artillery piece within range to register its fire on the fortress. This was not to be an indiscriminate bombardment, but a carefully planned one with precise targeting. Stone walls could stop rifle fire, but they would not withstand direct hits from 155mm shells. Underground chambers might protect against fragments, but a direct impact would bring them down. Third, Patton called in air support, not general-purpose fighter bombers dropping area bombs, but specialized attack aircraft armed with precision munitions. Their targets were specific structures within the fortress complex: the major's command post, the artillery emplacements, and the ammunition stores. Finally, in a clear display of his understanding of psychological warfare, Patton ordered loudspeakers brought forward. The Germans inside the fortress would be told exactly what was about to happen, not as a vague threat, but as a timetable. At a certain hour, the artillery would begin. At another, the air strikes would follow. After that, the assault. They would be given time to think, time to understand that their commander's dramatic stand for honor was about to get them all killed. Patton also made it clear to his own commanders that this would not be a cautious, casualty-averse operation. The major wanted a fight. They would give him one, but it would be so overwhelming, so intense, and so precisely coordinated that it would end quickly. Hours, not days. The message to Patton's troops was just as clear. The Germans inside had been offered surrender. They had refused. What followed was a consequence of their decision, not American choice. The attack began at dawn, not because dawn assaults were traditional, but because Patton wanted defenders to spend the entire night knowing exactly what was coming. The loudspeakers had already broadcast a timetable. The men inside the fortress knew that at first light, the artillery would begin. They had hours to think about it. Hours for less fanatical soldiers to question their commander's decision. Hours for doubt and fear to spread through the ranks. When the sun rose, the artillery opened fire precisely on schedule. This was not random shelling, but carefully coordinated barges aimed at specific sections of the fortress walls. The objective was not simple damage, but a methodical dismantling of the defenses. The stone walls were several feet thick and built to endure punishment, but Patton had positioned heavy guns specifically for the task of breaking fortifications. Shell after shell struck the same areas again and again, tearing open breaches, creating weak points, and exposing the interior of the fortress. German artillery attempted to answer fire, but American counter-battery response was immediate and deadly accurate. Whenever a German gun fired, American shells began landing on its position within minutes. German crews quickly learned that returning fire meant being located and destroyed. After roughly 2 hours of sustained artillery bombardment, the air strikes began. P-47 Thunderbolts swept in carrying 500-pound bombs. This was not carpet bombing. These were precision attacks against clearly identified targets. The major's command post was hit directly 3 times. Ammunition storage areas were struck, setting off secondary explosions that shook the entire fortress. The main gate was blown apart, torn from its hinges by the force of the blasts. Throughout all of this, the loudspeakers continued broadcasting. They described what was happening in real time, announced what would happen next, and repeatedly offered a final opportunity to surrender before the ground assault began. The message was blunt but clear. Anyone who wanted to live could walk out with their hands raised and would be treated properly. Some took the offer. At first, just a few German soldiers emerged from damaged sections of the wall, hands raised, walking toward American lines. Then more followed. Small groups turned into dozens. They chose survival over their commander's oath. The major tried to maintain discipline. He ordered soldiers who attempted to surrender to be shot as traitors, but this only hastened the collapse of morale. The troops realized they were trapped between overwhelming American firepower on one side and a fanatical commander on the other. By mid-morning, the fortress was in ruins. Multiple breaches gaped in the walls. Artillery positions had been destroyed. The command structure had effectively ceased to exist after the precision strikes on the headquarters. Then the American infantry moved in, not from a single direction, but through every breach at once. Sherman tanks rolled forward to point-blank range, firing directly into the openings. Flamethrower teams cleared bunkers. Combat engineers used explosives to collapse the last remaining strong points. What stood out was how controlled it all was. This was not the chaotic, grinding combat that fortress assaults usually devolved into. It was systematic, almost mechanical. Patton's preparation had been so thorough that there was little left to fight. German resistance was fragmented and confused. Small pockets of soldiers fired briefly, then surrendered. The major's threats to execute deserters no longer mattered. There was no functioning command structure left to enforce them. American troops cleared the fortress section by section. Loudspeakers advanced with them, broadcasting surrender appeals in German, promising safety to anyone who laid down their weapons, and making it clear that continued resistance was suicide, not bravery. The major himself was discovered in what remained of his command bunker. He had barricaded himself inside with a handful of loyal soldiers. When American troops broke into the position, he reportedly raised his pistol toward them. An American sergeant shot him. There was no speech, no dramatic final stand. The threat was ended quickly and professionally. The major had said Patton would have to kill him to take the fortress. That is exactly what happened. The few soldiers who had stayed with the major surrendered immediately. They had followed orders to the end, but once their commander was dead, they had no desire to die with him. From the opening artillery barrage to the final surrender, the entire operation took less than 12 hours. American casualties were minimal. A small number of soldiers were wounded by sporadic German fire, but none were killed. The overwhelming preparation and firepower made the final fighting almost anticlimactic. German losses were far heavier. The major was dead as promised. Roughly 200 other German soldiers were killed, most during the bombardment or the final assault. Around 300 were wounded. The remaining 1,000 surrendered. When American intelligence officers examined the fortress afterward, they found clear evidence of how close the major had come to losing control even before the first shot was fired. There were notes from junior officers questioning the decision to fight at all. Soldiers had been executed for trying to surrender. There were clear signs that morale had collapsed days before the battle even began. The major believed his defiance would inspire his men. Instead, it trapped them in an indefensible position under a commander who preferred to see them die rather than lay down their weapons. Patton toured the fortress the following day. According to officers who accompanied him, he showed no satisfaction and no sense of triumph. He was purely matter-of-fact. The major had said they would have to kill him. They did. That, Patton remarked, was what happened when you challenge people to do what they were already prepared to do anyway. But Patton made another point during that visit. He personally checked on wounded German prisoners and made sure they were receiving proper medical care. American medics were treating German wounded alongside American casualties. He wanted his own troops to see that once the fighting ended, prisoners were to be treated humanely. To Patton, this was not a contradiction. It was his philosophy. Ruthless in combat, professional in victory, destroy enemies who resist, care for enemies who surrender. Never blur the line between the two. News of what happened at the fortress spread quickly through both American and German ranks. For American soldiers, it reinforced what they already believed about Patton. He would use overwhelming force when necessary, but he always tried diplomacy first. The German major had been given multiple chances to surrender. His death was a result of his own decision, not American cruelty. For German forces, the message was darker and more unsettling. The story was not simply that the fortress had fallen. Fortresses fell all the time. It was how completely and systematically it had been destroyed. How Patton had taken the major's defiant challenge literally and carried it out step by step. how less than 12 hours of precisely coordinated firepower had reduced a supposedly strong position to rubble. German commanders began circulating the story as a warning. When American forces offered surrender terms, especially units associated with Patton's army, those offers needed to be taken seriously. Refusing did not lead to negotiations or half measures. It meant Patton would do exactly what he said he would do. No more, no less, and he would do it with overwhelming efficiency. Some German officers later stated during interrogations that they surrendered to American forces specifically because they had heard about the fortress. They understood that Patton's threats were not bargaining tactics. They were statements of fact. Challenge him, and he would accept the challenge. Dare him to destroy you, and he would. This was psychological warfare at its most effective. Not propaganda, not exaggeration, just the truth. Patton meant what he said. The battle also confirmed something German intelligence had already observed about American tactics under Patton's command. American forces would apply maximum force when necessary, but they would also show restraint when possible. They were not randomly brutal. They were predictably brutal only toward enemies who chose to fight. That predictability was, in many ways, more frightening than random violence. You knew exactly what would happen if you refused surrender. You knew exactly how Patton would respond to defiance. The choice was yours, and so were the consequences. Looking back at the fortress battle, it's worth asking what the German major's defiance actually achieved. He believed he was defending honor. He wanted to show that not all officers would surrender quietly, that the Americans would be made to pay for every step forward. What he actually accomplished was getting roughly 200 of his men killed, 300 wounded, and the remaining 1,000 sent to prisoner of war camps for a position that held for less than a single day and delayed the American advance by perhaps 12 hours. Had he accepted the initial surrender offer, all 1,500 of his soldiers would have survived. They would have spent the remainder of the war in relatively safe camps. Many would have returned home to their families after the war ended. Instead, hundreds were killed or permanently injured. And for what? The fortress fell anyway. The road junction was in American hands by nightfall. Patton's advance continued without any meaningful delay. This is the brutal arithmetic of war that idealistic commanders sometimes forget. Heroic last stands make powerful stories, but they do not change outcomes when facing overwhelming force. They only increase casualties. The major believed his defiance would matter, that his willingness to die would inspire his troops and perhaps make the Americans hesitate. But Patton did not hesitate. He simply applied more force. There's also a broader leadership lesson here, one that extends beyond the battlefield. When you make dramatic declarations, statements like, "You'll have to kill me," or "I will never surrender," you had better be prepared for your opponent to take you at your word. Some people will. Patton was one of them. He did not interpret defiant challenges as openings for negotiation. He treated them as expressions of intent. You want to fight to the death? Very well. That can be arranged. The German major learned that lesson too late. His soldiers learned it at a far higher cost, of their lives or their freedom. Other German commanders learned the lesson in time and chose to surrender when terms were offered. The fortress fell in September 1944. The German major died there, exactly as he had promised he would. His name is not widely remembered. The precise location of the fortress matters less than what occurred inside its walls. What matters is the lesson it left behind. With Patton, dramatic defiance did not slow events down. It simply altered the intensity of what followed. Another commander might have taken the statement, "You'll have to kill me," as an insult, or try to prove moral superiority by offering better terms or conducting a slow, casualty-conscious operation. Patton did none of that. He treated the statement as a clear declaration of intent and responded accordingly. There is something almost coldly logical about the exchange. The major defined his terms. Only death would make him surrender. Patton delivered those terms efficiently and without unnecessary drama. The major received exactly what he said he wanted. For modern audiences, this raises uncomfortable questions. Should Patton have tried harder to persuade the major to surrender? Should he have hesitated to kill a man who was, in effect, choosing death through his own actions? Or was Patton right to take people at their word and refuse to waste time on someone who had already made his decision? Is there something almost respectful, in a harsh way, about honoring a man's stated wish, even when that wish is death? The answer depends largely on how you view leadership, responsibility, and the limits of mercy in war. What cannot be disputed is the outcome. The major said, "You'll have to kill me." Patton did, and every other German commander who heard the story learned to be very careful about what they said to American negotiators afterward. Because with Patton, challenges were not deterrence. They were permission. Do you think Patton should have done more to avoid killing the major? Or was the major's death entirely the result of his own choices? Share your thoughts in the comments. And if you want more stories about leadership, responsibility, and the consequences of dramatic words, subscribe now. See you next time.